I want to start with a confession. When I bought my first home, someone asked me, "What do you want this property to do for you in 20 years?" And I said, and I'm not proud of this, "Have a nice kitchen." That was my answer. A nice kitchen.
A nice kitchen?
A nice kitchen. I was not a real estate professional at that time, but I still should have known better. And my entire vision for what was about to be the largest financial decision of my life was cabinet situation.
You're not alone. I promise you, you're not alone.
The number of people, smart, capable, financially literate people who have never been asked that question. What do you want this asset to do for your family over the arc of your life? Not what neighborhood, not how many bedrooms, the 20-year question. That question is this entire episode.
And for the record, what does your kitchen look like now, Natalie?
Gorgeous. Completely irrelevant to my net worth, but gorgeous.
I know, right?
Welcome back. I am Natalie Francinne.
And I'm Alexis Nassif. Let's build the framework.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay. Go for
Alexis, before we get into the mechanics, I want to stay with this question for a moment because I think it's actually harder to answer than it sounds. Most people, when you ask them what they want their real estate to do in 20 years, they freeze.
They freeze because no one has ever asked them. It's not that they haven't thought about it. They've just been given a completely different set of questions to think about.
Rate, payment, square footage, school district.
All present tense questions. None of them are wrong, but none of them are the right frame for a decision that compounds over decades.
I had a client last year, physician, incredibly sharp, who came to me wanting to sell a rental property because it was too much work. And I asked her, "What does this property produce for you annually? Net of everything." She didn't know the exact number. When we ran it together, it was funding a significant portion of her retirement projections. She had been thinking about the inconvenience and not the function. She kept the property, hired a manager, problem solved.
The asset was working. She just hadn't asked it what it was doing.
Exactly. So the framework, walk us in.
4 mechanisms: appreciation, equity, cash flow, leverage, and I want to start with appreciation because it is one everyone knows and the one most people misuse for their entire strategy.
Because appreciation is sexy.
Very.
It's the number you brag about at dinner. I bought it for X and now it's worth Y.
And it is real. Over 45 years, I have watched property values do extraordinary things. But appreciation is a benefit, not a strategy. You do not buy a property betting on appreciation. You buy for fundamentals and let appreciation be the reward for patience.
What's the distinction in practice? Because I think people here don't count on appreciation and they think you're being pessimistic about the market.
Not pessimistic, just honest about control. You cannot control whether a market appreciates. You can control whether you buy a fundamentally sound property in a location with strong demand drivers. Do that and the appreciation tends to follow. Chase appreciation without the fundamentals, that's speculation.
2006 called, it wants its buyers back.
Exactly.
Okay, so appreciation is the bonus, not the plan. What's the mechanism people actually underestimate?
Equity, because it builds whether the market moves or not.
Let's define it clearly for anyone who's fuzzy on it. Equity is the difference between what your property is worth and what you owe on it. Simple.
Simple, and it grows two ways. Appreciation, yes, but also every single mortgage payment you make. Every payment reduces your principal. Slowly at first, faster over time.
This is the part I wish someone had drawn on a napkin for me early in my career. In the early years of a mortgage, most of your payment is interest. It feels like you're barely moving the needle. But around year 10, 11, 12, the equity accumulation starts to accelerate meaningfully. And by year 15, you are building real wealth every single month just by making your payment.
Without doing anything else, without the market going up, just by holding.
There's also the protection angle here that I want to name because we talk a lot about it on this show. The legal proceedings, divorce, probate. Equity is the number that matters in every single one of those situations. It is what the court is dividing. It is what the heirs are inheriting. And if that equity has been quietly extracted through a HELOC or a cash out refinance,
there's nothing left to divide, and I know that for a fact.
I have sat across the table from women in divorce proceedings who believed they had a significant equity in the marital home and discovered that their spouse had been refinancing systematically for years. The equity was gone. The house was essentially at maximum leverage, and the settlement that they had been planning around didn't exist anymore.
Protect your equity like it is the actual asset, because it is. For real, it really is. That is the equity, is the most important.
Cash flow. This is the one nobody talks about at the dinner parties.
Because it sounds boring.
It sounds like a spreadsheet. It sounds like maintenance calls at 11 p.m. and tenants who pay late. It does not sound like I bought it for X and now it's worth Y.
And yet every client I have who has built durable, lasting wealth has cash flow as the foundation.
Here is how I explain it to clients. Appreciation gives you wealth on paper. Cash flow gives you options in real life. Cash flow is the thing that lets you hold through a down market because you're not bleeding every month. It's the thing that lets you wait out a bad moment in a legal proceeding rather than accepting a lowball offer because you're desperate. I have a phrase for it that I use constantly. Cash flow is the fuel that lets you be patient.
That's exactly right, Natalie.
And patience, as we established in episode 2, is one of our greatest advantages.
The judicial dimension is real too. A property in a probate estate that generates cash flow is property that the estate can afford to hold while the legal process unfolds. A property that cash flow is negative is a property that forces a sale at the court's timeline.
So the cash flow build during ownership becomes your optionality during the legal proceeding. I had genuinely never thought about it that way until we started working on this show. and now I think about it all the time.
It changes how you evaluate every acquisition.
Minimum standard. What do you tell your clients?
Monthly rental income should exceed all costs, mortgage, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and leave something left over. Even if that margin is small, at first, it needs to exist. A property that breaks even is not a cash flow property. It is a liability dressed as an asset.
Leverage. The mechanism that makes real estate unique, and the one that comes with the biggest asterisk.
Both things are true simultaneously. Leverage is the most powerful wealth building tool available to ordinary investors. And leverage is the thing that turns a temporary setback into a permanent loss if you use too much of it.
Explain the power first, because I think some listeners are underselling how remarkable this actually is.
A 20% down payment gives you control of 100% of the asset. When that asset appreciates, all of it is yours. When it generates cash flow, all of it is yours. You have used other people's money to build your wealth.
There is no other asset class where an ordinary person can do that at scale. You cannot put 20% down on the stock market and control 100% of a position with the bank's money. Real estate is genuinely unusual in that way.
And the danger is the exact mirror of the power. Leverage amplifies losses as readily as it amplifies gains. The investor who is over-leveraged has no margin for error. A vacancy, a repair, a temporary market dip, any of these can force a sale at exactly the wrong moment and lose.
What's conservative? Give people a number they can actually use.
20% minimum down on investment properties. Monthly debt service, the more than 65% of monthly rent. 6 months of carrying costs in reserve. Those are floors, not targets.
I want to say something about the reserve piece because I think it's the most important first-time investors skip. The reserve feels like money sitting there doing nothing. It feels like a wasted opportunity. And then the HVAC fails, and you realize the reserve wasn't doing nothing. It was making sure you didn't have to make a panic decision in a bad market.
The reserve is your patience fund.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, it's a patience fund.
The reserve is your patience fund. Alexis just invented a phrase.
I did, and I love it. It's great. You can have it too. You can use it.
Oh, thanks, Alexis. We have talked all season about the judicial war, the probate proceeding, the divorce settlement, the estate dispute. And I want to connect it directly to these 4 mechanisms because every single one of them has a legal dimension that most people never think about until they're in that room.
Every piece of real estate you own will eventually encounter a legal process. That is not a risk, that is certainty. The question is whether the wealth you built survives it.
Walk us through the failure modes, not abstractly, Alexis, specifically.
Unclear title, equity that was extracted and spent, a property that can't get cash flow through a legal way, over leverage at exactly the moment the proceeding forces a sale.
Let me translate each of those into plain language.
Please do.
Unclear title means someone finds a lien, a dispute, a recording error from 15 years ago, and suddenly your sale stops cold while lawyers sort it out. Every day of a delay costs money. Extracted equity means the court looks at the most valuable asset and the number is a fraction of what it should be because the equity was used to fund a lifestyle rather than preserved as wealth.
Cash flow failure in a legal proceeding means the estate or the divorcing household cannot afford to hold the property long enough for a good outcome. Forced sales in constrained timelines almost never produce good prices. They just don't.
And over leverage means there's no room, no margin for error. The proceeding takes longer than expected and the carrying costs eat what was left.
The protection for all four is the same. Structure early before you need it.
What does structure look like at the most basic level? Because I think people hear estate planning, their eyes glaze over. Yeah. It sounds like something their parents needed to do, not them.
A revocable living trust is the starting point. Your property gets retitled into the trust. When you die, the successor trustee you've named steps in immediately. No probate, no court, no 18 months of carrying costs.
And the cost of that trust in most states is between $1,500 and $4,000, which sounds like a lot until you compare it to the $50,000 to $100,000 in fees, costs, and delays that probate produces on a moderately sized estate.
It's the most asystematic protection available. Small cost, enormous benefit.
And what else?
Proper title on every property, beneficiary designations reviewed and are current, and a conversation with your heirs about what you've built and what you want to happen with it.
That last one, the conversation. I want to stay here for a second because it's the one that gets skipped most consistently. People do the legal documents and consider the job done. But the document without the conversation is just paperwork. Your heirs need to know what they're inheriting and what you intended for it.
The estate I have watched survive intact are the ones where that conversation happened every time. Every time.
And the ones that became wars.
Everyone was guessing what's going to happen, who's getting what. Nobody knew.
We opened with the 20-year question, and I made fun of myself for answering it with kitchen cabinetry. Let's actually answer it properly. If a listener is sitting with that question right now, what are the versions of the answer that change the strategy?
4 versions. I want to live here debt-free, but conservatively. Pay it down. Protect the equity. I want retirement income built toward a cash-flowing portfolio. I want to pass this to my children. Legal structure now. Conversation of equity over time. Family conversation. I want financial opportunity in a crisis. I want leverage, and I want it to be clean.
What's interesting about that list is how different each strategy is. The person building toward retirement income is making completely different decisions than the person focused on passing wealth to children. And yet both of them might be looking at the same property.
The property is neutral. The intention shapes everything.
I want to say something to the listener who is sitting with this question and feeling a little overwhelmed. You don't have to have the perfect answer. You just have to have an honest one. I have asked this question to hundreds of clients. The ones who say, I don't know, That's not a problem. That's the beginning of a real conversation. What we're trying to avoid is the client who has never been asked and therefore has never thought about it and therefore makes every decision reactively. Reactive decisions in real estate are almost always the most expensive.
The question costs nothing. The absence of the question costs everything. Got to ask that question.
3 things before episode 5. 1, answer the 20-year question. For every piece of real estate you own or are considering, write it down. It does not have to be elegant. It has to be honest. 2, run the 4 mechanisms against what you currently own. Appreciation. Are your fundamentals sound? Equity. Do you know the exact number and is it protected? Cash flow. Are you net positive every month? Leverage. Is your position conservative enough to survive a bad 6 months? 3, if you own real estate and do not have a trust, find out what one costs in your state this week. Not this month, this week. 1 phone call. That's all it takes to start.
And the question I want you sitting with before next week: who in your life, attorney, financial advisor, real estate professional, has actually asked you the 20-year question? If the answer is no one, that tells you something important about your team. They're not doing their job. They're not asking this question.
For the record, I have since asked the 20-year question of my kitchen. It said, I am a kitchen, I do not build wealth. Please stop asking me.
At least it's honest, for heaven's sakes, you know?
Next week, the female advantage. This is the episode Alexis has been waiting to record. And honestly, after the week I've had, I need it. I'm Natalie Francinne.
And I'm Alexis Nassif. And yes, I've been waiting for that.
This is Wealth, War, and Real Estate. Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.